Welcome to 33 Founders, a series about founders of the coolest startups. Brought to you by 33 Voices and hosted by Chase Jennings and Jenna Abdu.
Hey guys, I'm Noah Rosenberg. I'm the founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief of Narratively. Narratively is a platform devoted to original, true, and in-depth stories. We focus on New York initially. We launched here in September of 2012. We've since expanded to cover stories from other cities, other places as well. And we're really all about untold stories, capturing the spirit of a place through the narratives that really do it justice. And we tell each story in the most appropriate format. So, Monday we might produce a short film, Tuesday a long-form narrative, Wednesday a photo essay. It's one theme a week, one story a day, what we like to call slow storytelling, really allowing each story to have the space and time it needs to have an impact. So narrative.ly is the website. That's kind of the hub of what we do right now, but beyond Narratively online, we have live events we hold once a month where we bring our stories to life through film screenings, panel discussions, kind of more experimental events where we get our authors and our subjects and our audience together for kind of, little wandering discussions and interaction, and really just think creatively in terms of how we can bring these stories alive beyond just the web. Moving forward, we have big plans to expand even more into other cities, capturing these human interest stories from other places that really aren't getting the attention they deserve, being a platform for content producers who aren't getting the spotlight or the kind of the platform that they need. And the sky's the limit. I mean, we'd love to get our content, our videos in the back of seat backs on airlines or in the back of taxi cabs, film festivals, produce, possibly even a collector's edition type print product of our content. And really, it's all about the story. The story comes first. And we've spun that off into a bit of a content agency, which is subsidizing our business now. And so we'll essentially leverage our network of fantastic writers and filmmakers and illustrators who've worked for the New York Times and other top outlets, and we're taking on kind of for-hire work from brands and nonprofits, which is really exciting because it enables us to channel higher-paying work to our contributors and hopefully free them up to continue producing these passion projects for Narratively. So it's been a fantastic experience so far. Just 11 months in, our year anniversary is coming up in about 2 weeks, which is actually my wedding day as well. So it's September 7th. It's a big day for us. I keep joking with my fiance that the wedding should double as an anniversary party for Narratively, and she does not like that joke. She wants to come first for once, so I'll be at my best behavior.
That sounds awesome. I want to start out, Noah, with the feeling I have every time I get onto Narratively, and that's a deep call to action. To be honest, in a very long time, I haven't felt that way getting onto a site that's delivering news. How do you engage your users on such an emotional level?
It's a great question, Jen. I think, one thing we hear over and over again is that our content is refreshing. That in this day and age, when you're constantly bombarded with content and information and stories coming at you left and right, we step outside the news cycle, and in a sense we avoid the news entirely and just focus on these rich stories that capture the spirit of a place. And a lot of that hinges on nostalgia. We're telling these stories of the 90-year-old tugboat captain or the forgotten kind of bars and cemeteries of New York or other cities, and we're tapping into this kind of innate curiosity that we all have as people, but oftentimes gets lost in this hectic, lifestyle that we all live. So, I think, in a sense, we're not giving people content that's going to inform their stock market choices or, is going to play at the top of a CNN evening newscast. But these are stories that I think are still going to resonate with you and still kind of make you step back and think, wow, this person's out there in this world. And we're introducing you to people that you would have never met otherwise. And we're really proud of that.
How can other startups, maybe outside the realm of journalism, make their content so personal that it calls their users to action?
It's a good question, Chase. I think, a big word we throw around is authenticity. I think, we're not trying to, play to kind of, the aggregators out there. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love anytime, one of the big, kind of gatekeepers picks up a story and sends tons of traffic. It's amazing. But we're not, if we wanted to kind of solve that issue and constantly get our stories, picked up all left and right, we would just literally do stories about sex and drugs every single day, because we've done a few of those in the Narratively aesthetic, of course, but they've been phenomenally amazing for us and sent us, an incredible amount of users. I think it's really just kind of staying true to your mission. Of course, that mission can change and evolve over time. Ours has and is. But I think, really just giving your audience something that they really can't get anywhere else, and making it clear that, you believe in, your product, you believe in your core mission at hand, and you believe in giving them something that they really can't get anywhere else. And I think, that of course can translate into whatever realm you're in, whether you're in a more kind of tech-focused space or in food. Everything has a story. And I think, one of the beauty parts of what we're doing now is that, we're sort of positioning ourselves as these master storytellers, and that's kind of, at least right now, it's twofold. I mean, we're telling these great stories on Narratively, but then we're also, as a business owner, we're essentially empowering you to tell your own story. We're producing that story for you in some cases as kind of a work for hire, which you can then distribute through your own channels. But then we're also teaching you to tell your own stories through workshops and other other kind of platforms that we're starting to build now. So I think it's all about finding the story behind who you are and what your identity is, whether you're producing chocolate bars or whether you're in the actual content game like we are, and creating your own narrative behind the business.
In the last year, Noah, has there been one story that's really stayed with you?
That we've produced? I think, I'd be remiss to not mention, our most popular story of all time, which was, it was called Legends Never Die, and it was about the kids from that 1990s cult classic, Kids. It followed this group of New York skateboarders, everyday kids.
The Harmony Korine piece?
Yeah, through that piece, the one that we wrote was by Caroline Rothstein. But it was long form piece, 6,500 or so words, epic story, catching up with the kids from the movie Kids. Like, where are they now, 15, 20 years later, which is a question that I guess a lot of people had wondered and wanted to ask, because that story just blew up. It had all the ingredients, of course. I mean, it had, sex and drugs and AIDS and skateboarding and New York nostalgia. And so, it kind of pulled at a lot of heartstrings and reminded people of their youth and this culture they were all involved in. Of course, we told it in this very narratively aesthetic, kind of looking at the backstory and really developing characters throughout the piece. But that story taught me a lot, because it blew up everywhere, and I think that story, to some people it was a New York story, to other people it was a skateboarding story, to other people still it was like a Hollywood movie story. And that's really teaching us that our stories need to be presented in a number of ways. Like, much like Huffington Post or BuzzFeed will have different verticals. Right now, Narratively is only discoverable, our content rather is only discoverable according to these themes we do every week and chronological order. Whereas I want to open it up more and allow you as the user to discover content. If you want to click on the science tab and find all our science stories, click there. If you want to find, LA stories, you'll click on the LA vertical. And I think, that story taught me a lot, because I think it meant so much to so many different people that I think it's really opening up a lot of doors for us.
Sure. Are you ever going to catch up with the kids of Gummo?
Maybe one of these days. I mean, it's a good model. If we were just to scale that model and catch up with the kids from pretty much
Selena Gomez 10 years from now.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you tap hidden sources to uncover these stories?
It's interesting. It's really just been. The fascinating thing is that I started Narratively because I've always been just in love with this type of storytelling. And something we can talk about maybe later is that the irony of all of this is that I'm so busy running a business now that I don't have time to really tell the stories. I just wrote my fourth Narratively piece a couple weeks ago, which is fine. I mean, we're growing the business here, and it's just the cool thing is that we now have this community of 350 plus writers and filmmakers, illustrators, really talented people just like myself. And when we have ideas, we can tap other people and they go out and produce them for us. Not to mention that everyone in our network is filled with ideas themselves. And I think one thing that's been really cool for us is we've become a home for a lot of these storytellers and their stories that haven't seen the light of day before. Some of our best pieces so far have been stories that writers have had in their back pocket more or less for years and just haven't been able to find a home for because they're too big or too unwieldy or too clunky or covering territory that's maybe taboo for mainstream media. And we can finally showcase those pieces and cast a spotlight on them. So that's been really a privilege for us. But the cool thing is that whether you're reporting for the New York Times like I did and many of our writers did for years, or writing for a blog somewhere, you're out there on the streets of New York or city XYZ, and whether you're covering breaking news or just going for a walk, you're always constantly finding stories and people and places and things that are just like, making you stop in your tracks. And we can now finally like shed some light on these things and take a few steps back and say, you know what, yeah, this I'm covering this crime scene for the Wall Street Journal, but wait a minute, who's this interesting character who just showed up to give power bars to everybody? Let's do a profile on this guy. And we've actually done stories just like that.
That's what I really want to focus on with you today, Noah, is that something you say in your video is that Narratively doesn't focus on the big breaking news. Instead, your team is looking to unveil New York and other cities' untold stories. In a world where everything is supposed to be summed up in 140 characters and be instantaneous, how do you present your work, something that's long form and not about breaking news, as equally and not even more so, but even more riveting?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge and an opportunity at once. I think it's a challenge because even though we do more than just long form, people think of us as kind of this in-depth outlet that, I think they associate with quality, but also the drawback to that is that it takes time. It's a commitment. If you want to sit down with a Narratively story, people think, you need half an hour or more to do it. So part of that is branding for us. We do shorter pieces and we're trying to do more of those. So maybe instead of just doing 4,000 word pieces all the time, we're going to step back and try to do some 1,200 word stories that are beautiful, that still, have the same style and quality and aesthetic, but aren't necessarily as big of a time commitment, because the reality is that not everybody has half an hour in the middle of the day to stop and read a long form piece, and so that's a challenge for us, is figuring out how can we deliver our product to consumers at the right time, in the right fashion, on the right medium and platform, etc. One way we accomplish that is in staying relevant. Is a challenge too. When you're not doing news stories, how do you inject yourself into the news cycle? And one thing that we found that's pretty effective is when we have a week of stories, for instance, that we develop our themes and stories weeks and months in advance. We thought for a long time about developing our stories around the concept of love and kind of matchmaking and so forth. And we were just going to do those stories because we wanted to do them. They're important stories to tell. But then we thought wait a minute. Why don't, it's coming up, Valentine's Day is coming up in a month and a half. Why not just wait and publish this week of stories around Valentine's Day? And as a result of that, lots of blogs and news sites pick them up and they spotlight these stories because they were relevant. And so that's been pretty big for us, always trying to find, even though our stories themselves are evergreen and don't necessarily have a news factor in them or a timeliness factor, we can still package those stories and present them in a time of year or around an event that's relevant, and that way will give us some more play in the news cycle. So, despite the fact that we like to kind of bash the news cycle and say that it's crazy and overwhelming, we still use it to our advantage as much as possible. And I think we can do a lot more of that as we move forward.
So on that note, what have you found that really works for you when you're trying to market or just promote a piece?
So it's a good question, and we're still trying to figure that out. I mean, for now, our most steady driver of traffic, kind of regularly, is Facebook. Social media is really good for us. Twitter isn't quite as effective, but it still is. But Facebook is sort of our number one steady driver. When Huffington Post picks up a story, on the New York vertical, which they do pretty often, if not almost every day, that sends us a lot of traffic. And so there's a lot of those so-called gatekeepers, the aggregators of the world, the curators, longform.org. When they pick up something, it's kind of like preaching to the choir, because their audience knows they trust their choices and recommendations. And so they'll kind of flock to our website in droves and really spend a lot of meaningful time on the site. I think for us now, the biggest thing continues to be, when we get a news article written about us, and we were fortunate early on to get a lot of really good press, and that happens, of course, when you're doing something exciting in the early stages, and now the challenge is kind of maintaining that interest, and of course, we have milestones like our anniversary coming up and other things where we can kind of, build in some excitement. But I think we can do a much better job of rolling out a whole kind of media blitz and publicity blitz around each week of stories we do, and of course individual stories. I mean, next week's theme is all about booze. I think we called it, the name of the week is Drinking Buddies. And so clearly there's blogs out there, there's distillers, there's breweries, there's bars that would love to kind of be a part of this week, whether it's holding an event or whether it's promoting the stories or linking to them on their blog or their website. So I think we can do a lot more in terms of kind of planning out a calendar and actually reaching out to people in the right way so that they want to kind of lift up some of these stories and share them with their own networks.
Have you found that, because I know you guys will do a long form piece and then a video, and so you're constantly doing and promoting stories in different ways, have you found that